Welcome back. Today I am going to teach you The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. It is very important poem and very interesting poem. Now let's start. If you like, then please subscribe, share and comment on video. The Road Not Taken. To help you learn what Frost's The Road Not Taken poem is all about, we will cover the following in this article. A brief intro to the poet Robert Frost. Information about the poem's background. The road not taken meaning. The road not taken analysis. Okay. Now, Robert Frost was born in 1874 in San Francisco, California. His father was a newspaper editor and his mother was a teacher and a Scottish immigrant. When he was about 10 years old, his family moved to Massachusetts to be near his grandfather, who owned a sawmill. Frost was named both the valedictorian and the class poet of his high school graduating class, and 2 years later published his first poem, My Butterfly and Elegy, in the New York. At this point, Frost knew he wanted to be a poet, but unfortunately, the next segment of Frost's life would be marked by upheaval. He attended both Dartmouth and Harvard, but dropped out of both before graduating. His poetry wasn't gaining traction in the United States either. To complicate matter further, Frost and his wife Elinor suffered personal tragedy when two of their six children died in infancy. In 1900, feeling frustrated by his job prospects and a lack of traction in his poetry career, Frost moved his family to a farm left to him by his grandfather in Derry, New Hampshire. Frost would live there for 9 years, and many of his most famous early poems were written before his morning course while tending to the farm. But Frost's poetry was still largely overlooked by American publishers. Consequently, Frost decided to sell the farm in 1911 and moved his family to London. It was there he published his first anthology of poetry, A Boy's Will, in 1913. Throughout his career, Frost never strayed far from old-fashioned pastoral poetry, despite the fact that newer American poets moved in a more experimental direction. Frost's poetry continued to focus on rural New England life up until his death in 1963. The Road Not Taken is a narrative poem, meaning it is a poem that tells a story. It was written in 1915 as a joke for Frost's friend Edward Thomas. Frost and Thomas were fond of hiking together, and Thomas often had trouble making up his mind which trail they should follow. Yes, that's right. One of the most famous American poems was originally written as a goofy private joke between two friends. Frost and Thomas were great friends. While Frost lived in England, both of them were well read and well interested in nature. They frequently took long walks together, observing nature in the English countryside. However, Frost's time in England ended in 1915, when World War I was on the verge of breaking out. He returned to the United States to avoid the war and fully expected Thomas to follow him. The Road Not Taken is a poem that argues for the importance of our choices, both big and small, since they shape our journey through life. For Frost, the most important decisions we make aren't the ones we spend tons of time thinking about, like who we have relationship with, where we go to college, or what our future career should be. Instead, Frost's poem posits that the small choices we make each and every day also have big impacts on our lives. Each decision we make sets up upon a path that we may not understand the importance of until much, much later. This theme is reflected throughout the poem. For instance, the poem begins with the speaker placing us in a sense, specifically at the point where two roads break away from each other in the middle of a yellow wood. The speaker is sorry they cannot go both direction and still be one traveler, which is to say that they can't live two divergent lives and still be one single person. In other words, the speaker can't have the cake and eat it too. The speaker has to choose one direction to go down because, like in life, making a decision often means that other doors are subsequently shut for you. For example, if you choose to go to college at UCLA, that means you are also choosing not to go to college elsewhere. You will never know what it would be like to go to the University of Michigan or as a freshman straight out of high school because you made a different choice, but this is true for similar day-to-day decisions as well. Choosing who you spend time with, how hard you study, and what hobbies you pursue are examples of smaller choices that also shape your future too. The speaker of the poem understands that they stand at the crossroad of these two paths for a long time, contemplating the choice. First, they stare down one path as far as he or she can to where it trails off into the undergrowth. The speaker then decided to take the other path, which they state is just as fair, meaning just as attractive as the first. The narrator states that the second path wanted wear, meaning that it was slightly more overgrown than the first path, while the speaker says they saved the first path for another day to make them feel better about their decision. The next two lines show that the speaker realizes they probably won't be able to double back and take the first path, no matter where the second one leads. Just like in life, each path leads to another path and then another. In other words, the decision we make in the moment add up and influence where we end up in life, and we don't really get a redo on. After choosing their path, the speaker says they look forward to a day far in the future when, with a sigh, they will tell people about taking the road less traveled by, and that has made all the differences. Does this mean that taking the one less traveled has made all the differences in a good way? Saying so with a sigh doesn't necessarily sound like a good thing. The poem isn't at all clear on whether or not taking the less traveled path was a good choice or a bad choice. So while the poem is clear that all of our choices shape the path we take in life, it is more ambiguous about whether choosing less traveled path is a good thing or not. That's up to reader to decide. The speaker begins at a point of bifurcation, which is a fancy way of saying break into two branches. As readers, we are meant to take the poem both as a literal story about someone in the woods trying to decide which way to go, as well as a metaphor about now our life choices are like divergent paths in the woods. Like we mentioned earlier, the poem is clear that you can't take two paths and still be one traveler, nor can you be certain that you will ever get a chance to taste out your other options. That's because every choice you make leads to more choices, all of which lead you further and further from our starting point. However, the point also suggests that while the choices we make are important, how we interpret these choices is what really makes us who we are. Essentially, the speaker is saying that later in life he will look back in time and see that moment as one of great significance, but we can only know which choices matter the most through the power of retrospection. Here is what first means. When we are making choices in life, they might seem inconsequential or like they are not that big of a deal. But once time passes and we have journeyed down our path a little further, we can look back into the past and see which choices have shaped us the most. And oftentimes, those choices aren't the ones we think are most important in the moment. The clarity and wisdom of hindsight allow us to realize that doing something like taking the path less traveled by has impacted our lives immensely. Our memories help us understand who we are and they shape the person we become. But as we tell ourselves our own story, we overwrite our memories. It's kind of like deleting a sentence and retyping it, only for to change a little bit each time. What is your earliest memory? What is your favorite memory? Now think about this. Are you remembering them or are you remembering them? Is there a difference? Yes, because science shows that every single time we recall a memory we change it. It's a very possible that your favorite early memory isn't your memory at all. It is more likely a memory of being told something that happened to you. Perhaps you have a photograph of a moment that triggers your memory. The photograph may not change, but you do, and your memory of the things that happened in that moment do. So, if our experiences and our choices make us who we are, but we are constantly misremembering and changing our memories, how do actual events even matter? The road not taken says that they do. Our choices we make are impactful, but the way we remember them is what helps shape us as individuals. So, the road not taken isn't necessarily an ode to bravely taking the less popular path when others wouldn't. It is more like an ode to being resigned, to be believing our choices made us who we are, even though if we had not made them, had not taken that path, we should be someone else who made choices that were just as valid. Okay, thanks.